in this video I am going to solve the following problem. So the question goes as, write a program to sort an array of zeros, ones and twos in ascending order. So let's say for example we have an array with all zeros, ones and twos. So we need to sort this array and the output should be like in ascending order. So the zeros comes first, followed by ones and twos. So this should be our output. So how we need to do this is, let's assume three variables for zeros, ones and twos, and each the variable is initialized to the number 0, and we can loop through this array and increment these variables. So let's say we have 1 here, so we increment the 1, this becomes 1, and then we got 0, so the 0 variable is incremented, and then we have 2, 2's is incremented. So finally this zeros becomes 2, ones becomes 2 and twos becomes 3, because we have 3 twos and 2 ones and 2 zeros. Then I'm gonna use a while loop or something, and we can just change the given array to this array. So let's write this in the code. Let's write the code for this. So function sort array. The parameters for this function is array. Then let's initialize the variables. Now let's first check for the corner cases. If array.length is less than or equals to 1, then return array. Actually, if it is less than 1, then return -1. We're not checking if it is equals to 1. We're just checking if array.length is less than 1. Then let's initialize the variables for storing the count of zeros, ones and twos. First zeros, and initialize it to 0, ones, now we are using the for loop to loop through the array. Let I is equals to 0, I less than array.length, I plus plus. So what we are going to check, if the array of I is equals to 0. If it is equals to 0, we just increment the variable count zeros to +1, which is zeros plus plus. Else, if array of I equals to 1, then we just increment ones, the variable ones. Else, if it is not 0 or 1, it should be 2, right? So in the else, we just increment the variable twos. Then after the for loop, after this for loop, what we need to do is we just loop through the all three variables, zeros, ones and twos, and we change the given array. So let's assume a variable. I'm declaring a variable I and initializing it to 0, and we are using a while loop here. While I is less than array dot length, because I am using this I to loop through the given array. So in the while loop, it should be in the ascending order, right? So I am starting with the count zeros. So if zeros is greater than 0, then what I'm going to do is I will change array of I, the element at array of I to 0. Then I will increment the I, and here we just used 1 0 at array of I, right? So we need to decrement the count zeros. Else if it is not if the zeros is not greater than 0, then we check for ones. If ones variable has the number that is greater than 0, then we'll assign array of I with 1. Then we increment the I and decrement ones. Else if 2's greater than 0, then array of I equals to 2. We increment the I and 2's are decremented. And finally, we are going to return the array, which is changed. Now let's check it with our example, which is 1 0 2 2 0 1 and 2. So we have these three variables, zeros, ones, twos. All three of them are at 0 currently. Now the for loop starts. So the first element in the array is 1, and it checks if the array is 0. It is not, so it goes into the else if condition and checks if the element is 1. As the element is 1, so the ones is incremented, so the variable ones becomes 1, and then it go to the I increments and it goes to the index 1, which is 0. Then zeros, the variable zeros is incremented, it becomes 1. Then the I is incremented and it is 2, so the 2's is incremented. Then I is incremented and the I is at index 3 now, so the element is 2. Then it checks if the element is 0 or 1. It's not 0 or 1, so the 2's is incremented again. It becomes 2. Then the I is incremented and it is at the index 4. So the element at index 4 is 0. So 0 is incremented. It becomes 2. The next element is 1. So 1 is incremented. The next element is 2. So the 2's becomes plus 1, 3. Now the for loop ends, stops here because the I is not no more less than the array dot length. Then we are initializing the variable I to 0. and the while loop starts. It checks if zeros is greater than 0. Here we have zeros equals to 2. So 2 is greater than 0. Then it's what it is doing is array of I. So we initialized I to 0. So I is 0, which means array of 0 equals to 0. So we are not using extra space, so we are just changing the array that is given to us as input. So what happens now is the 1 becomes 0, the remaining element stays as it is. Then the I is incremented, so I becomes 1, zeros is decremented, so the zeros becomes 1, 1 stays 2, and the 2's stays 3. Then while loop starts again. It checks if I is less than array dot length. I is at 1 and the array dot length is 7. So 1 is less than 7. And it checks if 0 is greater than 0. 0 is at 1, it is greater than 0. So the second element becomes 0. It is already 0, so we can just ignore it. Then the loop starts again, and it I becomes 2. When I becomes 2, it checks if here the zeros becomes minus 1 minus 1, which is 0, right? So when it checks if 0 is greater than 0, it will be false. So it goes into the else if statement where 1 is greater than 0. Yes, 1 is greater than 0. So it will change array of I, which is 2 here. Array of 2 becomes 1, which means this 2 here becomes 1. Now the I is incremented, I becomes 3, and 1 is decremented, so 1 becomes 1. Then the loop starts again, and it will check if the 1 is zeros is already 0, so it does not go into the zeros, so it will check the 1s. 1 is still greater than 0, so it will change array of 3 to 1. So this 2 becomes 1. Now the I becomes 4. 1 becomes 0. When the I becomes 4, it checks for if 0 is greater than 0. It is not. So it goes into the 1's greater than 0. So 1 is decremented and becomes 0. So it goes to the and checks if 2 is greater than 0. So the 2 is currently 3. So it will go to the index 4, and it will change the index 4 to 2. So the array currently we have is it becomes 2 and 2. Then I is incremented, I becomes 5. 2 is decremented, which becomes 2. So the array becomes 0 0 1 1 2, and at index 5, which is here, it becomes 2. Then I is incremented, 2 becomes 1. So 2 is greater than 0, so it becomes it will change the element at index 6 to 2, which means 0 0 1 1 2 2. At index 6 we already have 2, so it does not change anything. It becomes 2. Now we have the finally we have the array that is sorted in the ascending order. 2 0's 1 1 2 2 2. So the code that we wrote works correctly. Thank you.